I will point out that I think is really important, really came at the very end of the debate, that I wish the moderators, had they been fair and neutral, that they would have focused on, because it is a very serious issue that we're facing, which is censorship under Kamala Harris that we've seen over the last 4 years. We have hard evidence that this has been taking place. And you have Tim Walz himself, who has said that free speech and the First Amendment is a privilege and that it does not apply to misinformation and disinformation.
So let's set the stage, because when Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard come together on live television, you already know something big is about to drop. But no one was prepared for just how direct, how ruthless, and how exposing this moment would be. Governor Tim Walz, a name that's been floated around with praise in political circles, polished by the media as a steady leader, suddenly found himself stripped of that narrative, live and unfiltered.
Let's get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time. And
Kelly and Gabbard didn't just question his record. They ripped through the carefully crafted image, revealing a side of him that's been hidden from the public eye for far too long. Megyn Kelly came out swinging first, bringing receipts, highlighting contradictions in Walz's own words and actions. She pointed to the scandals swept under the rug, the decisions that hurt ordinary people while being spun as leadership. This wasn't vague criticism. It was a point-by-point exposure of hypocrisy. And as Kelly laid it out, her tone was icy, sharp, and unforgiving, the kind of delivery that cuts through PR spin like a knife. Then Tulsi stepped in, and that's when it went from tough commentary to a takedown.
President Trump are listening to the American people. You contrast that with what we hear from Kamala Harris, what we heard from Tim Walz, who had a really, really tough job tonight trying to defend Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's disastrous policies. But what we've heard from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over the last 4 years is how great Biden.
She didn't just echo Kelly. She added her own fire, pointing to Walz's failures in handling crises, his questionable connections, and the political games that benefited him while costing regular Americans. And Tulsi framed it in her trademark no-nonsense style, clear, grounded, and impossible to dismiss. What made it explosive wasn't just the facts themselves. It was the fact that this was happening live, in real time, without filters, without handlers stepping in to shut it down. Millions watching, hearing for the first time about a side of Walz they had never been told about before. And here's the kicker. The more they revealed, the more obvious it became that this wasn't just about Walz himself. It was about the system protecting him. The media silence, the political shielding, the way narratives were massaged to make him look like the perfect candidate, when in reality, there was a story lurking underneath, and Kelly and Gabbard just blew it wide open. By the end of the segment, Walz's name wasn't trending for leadership or policy. It was trending for scandal, for exposure, for the raw, uncomfortable truth that had finally been dragged out into the daylight. And here's the part that has people talking. This wasn't partisan noise. It wasn't an echo chamber. It was two women from different political backgrounds coming together and agreeing on one thing. The public deserves to know the truth, and Tim Walz's record isn't what you've been told.
And then here's two pieces of this that are really, I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied.
Here's where it gets serious, because once Kelly and Gabbard started peeling back the layers, the so-called dark secret around Tim Walz wasn't just one thing. It was a pattern, a chain of failures, cover-ups, and questionable moves that paint a very different picture than the one his allies in the media like to sell. Megyn Kelly wasted no time laying out Walz's record during the unrest that shook Minnesota, reminding viewers how his leadership faltered in a moment of crisis, how neighborhoods burned, businesses were destroyed, and ordinary citizens begged for help that never came. Kelly described the hesitation, the indecision, the unwillingness to step up when leadership mattered most. And it was damning, Because leadership isn't about speeches when things are calm. It's about action when things fall apart. And Walz simply wasn't there. And then Tulsi came in, sharp, cutting, pointing out how Walz used the military service card to boost his public image. But when you dig deeper, critics argue his record isn't what he claims. Gabbard didn't mince words. She called out the exaggerations, the narrative building, the way his story has been polished to appear like strength when in reality it raises more questions than answers. But it didn't stop there, because the two also pointed out how the media has shielded him from real accountability, stories buried, questions avoided, and tough interviews nowhere to be found. If this was any other leader, they said the coverage would have been relentless, but Walz got protection and live on air. That protection cracked wide open. And here's the part that hit hardest. This wasn't just about Tim Walz as an individual. It was about the culture of politics that rewards spin and punishes truth. Kelly and Gabbard became the voices cutting through that fog, exposing not just a man, but the system that enables him. And when you watched it, you could feel the tension, you could feel the discomfort, because they were saying what no one else on television was willing to say. By the time they were finished, the air was heavy, the audience stunned, and the image of Tim Walz as the safe bet or the steady hand was gone, shattered in real time, replaced with doubt, with controversy, with questions that now demand answers. And that's why this moment is bigger than just one TV exchange. It's about accountability, it's about honesty, it's about pulling back the curtain on political theater and asking, who really benefits, who's really telling the truth, and who's hiding behind the narrative? Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard made it clear. The people deserve better. They deserve leaders who don't rely on spin, who don't hide behind curated stories, who don't dodge responsibility when the stakes are high. And that's the conclusion right here. Whatever side you're on politically, this moment proved that the truth, raw and uncomfortable, still has power. And when it breaks through, no amount of PR spin can put it back in the box. Tim Walz just learned that lesson the hard way. And it's a lesson the entire political world is now paying attention to.